world balanced delicately between light and darkness, the tale of Marcus Reed, who would come to be known as ShockWave, unfolds, a saga steeped in divine legacy and fierce battles against dark forces. Born in the bustling heart of New York City, Marcus's life was a blend of ordinary teenage joys and struggles, unaware of the fate that awaited him. A destiny intertwined with the powers of an ancient lightning god named Seti. The day began like any other, with gray clouds looming over the cityscape as Marcus made his way home from a late basketball practice. The air was heavy with the promise of rain, the streets slick with the first few drops that began to fall as night settled over New York City. Marcus, ever fascinated by the electric spectacle of storms, decided to take a detour through Central Park, drawn by the raw energy that seemed to pulse through the atmosphere. As he walked along the winding paths, the storm intensified, the rumbling of thunder echoing through the towering oaks and elms. Lightning flashed across the sky, a natural symphony of light and sound that captivated Marcus. He found himself standing on a small hill, overlooking the park's expansive fields, his eyes wide with awe at the display. Suddenly, a particularly brilliant bolt of lightning struck a nearby tree, the ground shaking under the force of the impact. Marcus, driven by a mix of curiosity and recklessness, ran towards the site, his heart pounding in his chest. There, amidst the scorched earth and smoking debris, he found not just the charred remains of the tree, but something extraordinary. A figure glowing with an ethereal light, barely visible through the lingering smoke. The figure was Seti, the ancient lightning god, who appeared as a tall, regal being clad in armor that flickered with electric currents. His eyes were like deep pools of storm clouds, and his presence was both terrifying and awe-inspiring. Seti, sensing the inherent courage and curiosity in Marcus, chose him as the worthy successor to inherit his powers. "Weakened I am, young mortal," Seti's voice boomed, echoing like thunder. "For centuries I have battled the darkness that seeks to consume your world. My time nears its end, and you, Marcus Reed, have been chosen to carry forth the storm's legacy." The god extended his hands, and Marcus, driven by an unknown force, stepped forward. Electric energy surged from Seti's hands into Marcus, enveloping him in a blinding light. The power was immense, crackling through him like wildfire, rewriting the very essence of his being. Marcus felt as if his body were dissolving, his human limitations shattering, replaced by something powerful and divine. As the light faded, Seti was gone. His last bit of life force transferred to Marcus. Alone now, with the storm dissipating around him, Marcus stood transformed. He felt the electricity coursing through his veins, vibrant and alive, a constant hum of power that resonated with the heartbeat of the city below. In that moment, under the remnants of the stormy sky, Marcus Reed ceased to be just another city kid. He had become ShockWave, the inheritor of Seti legacy and the new guardian against the encroaching darkness. In the silence following Seti's departure, Marcus stood alone under the still turbulent sky, trying to grasp the magnitude of what had just occurred. The park around him seemed untouched by the cosmic transfer of power, leaving Marcus to wonder if what he had experienced was real. But the electric energy pulsating through him was undeniable. It surged within him with each heartbeat, a constant reminder of the godly force now residing in his body. As Marcus experimented tentatively, extending a hand, sparks danced from his fingertips, tracing arcs of electricity that crackled and popped in the cool night air. He could feel the power of the storm, the legacy of Seti coursing through him, waiting to be mastered. Yet with this incredible power came a heavy responsibility, one that Seti had entrusted to him in his final moments. "Protect the light against the darkness that consumes." Seti's words echoed in his mind. Marcus knew this was no longer just about him. It was about maintaining the balance between light and darkness. The weight of this new duty felt overwhelming, but Marcus resolved to rise to the challenge. He would need to understand and control these new abilities quickly, as the threat of the darkness loomed unknown. The next morning, Marcus awoke in his own bed, as if he had returned home from the park on his own. Yet everything felt different. His senses were heightened, and the ambient electrical devices in his room hummed softly, responding to his new presence. Marcus got up, his mind racing with thoughts about his newfound powers and the dire warnings of an impending darkness. In the secrecy of his room, he began testing his abilities, starting small with powering a light bulb without any wires. It flickered to life at his command, glowing steadily as he focused his thoughts. His control was still raw, but with each attempt he felt more attuned to the electric energies around him. Realizing the potential need for a disguise, Marcus designed a suit that could handle his electric output without burning up. He chose materials that would not only insulate, but also amplify his abilities, allowing him better control and providing a layer of protection. He fashioned a symbol, a bolt of lightning, to represent his new identity as ShockWave. This period of isolation and practice was crucial for Marcus. He learned to channel his electricity into powerful blasts, to sense electrical currents in his vicinity, and even to manipulate them to his will. Each night, under the guise of darkness, he would venture out, testing his capabilities, learning to move with the speed of electricity itself. One such night, as Marcus zipped through the city, he felt a sudden, sharp pull towards an area clouded with a palpable darkness. It was his first encounter with the minions of Gabriel, the Demon King. The battle that ensued tested every skill he had honed, pushing Marcus to understand the true extent of his powers and the true nature of the evil he must face. This confrontation marked the real beginning of his journey as ShockWave, a beacon of protection in a city that unknowingly teetered on the edge of darkness. As Marcus, now ShockWave, grew accustomed to his powers and the role of a protector, news of his heroic deeds began to ripple through New York City's undercurrents, reaching far beyond its human inhabitants. The tales of a new guardian wielding divine electrical powers stirred unease in the darker corners of the city, where shadows whispered of ancient evils and long-standing battles between celestial forces. Gabriel, the Demon King, seated on his dark throne within the underworld realms, felt a disturbance in his dominion. A protector powered by a god's essence was not just a local hero. He was a direct threat to the plans Gabriel had meticulously laid to expand his darkness into the human world. With his necromantic powers, Gabriel had long manipulated the boundary between life and death, amassing an army of demonic entities and undead minions that obeyed his every command. Determined to assess this new threat personally, Gabriel conjured a portal from his dark realm to the surface, near the outskirts of the city. The night air chilled as he stepped through, his presence causing the city's ambient malice to stir. To draw out ShockWave, Gabriel unleashed a horde of reanimated dead, their hollow eyes gleaming with unholy light, and commanded them to sow chaos throughout the city's dimly lit streets. The chaos did not go unnoticed. Marcus, sensing a deep disturbance in the city's electrical currents, donned his ShockWave suit and traced the disruption to its source. As he approached, the sight of reanimated corpses tearing through the streets ignited a fierce determination within him. This was his calling, to protect the city from such darkness. Gabriel watched from the shadows as ShockWave arrived, curious about the hero's capabilities. Marcus, feeling the weight of his responsibility more than ever, launched into action. Lightning crackled around him as he directed powerful arcs of electricity towards the undead, disintegrating them with each precise strike. The air smelled of ozone and decay as the battle intensified, with ShockWave methodically dismantling Gabriel's minions. However, Gabriel was not merely testing ShockWave's combat prowess. He was studying him, learning his strengths and probing for weaknesses. After a brief skirmish, Gabriel stepped forward, cloaked in a shroud of dark energy, and confronted Marcus directly. The air around them crackled with the clash of divine electricity and dark necromantic power. "Ah, the new guardian." Gabriel's voice was a cold whisper that seemed to seep into Marcus's bones. "You wield your power well, but you know not the depth of darkness you face." Marcus responded defiantly. "I may be new to this power, but I know enough to stand against you and whatever shadows you command." The encounter escalated quickly as Gabriel unleashed more of his dark arts, summoning ethereal chains that sought to bind ShockWave. Marcus dodged and weaved, his body crackling with electric energy, breaking free from the chains with bursts of raw power. Realizing the battle was tipping in favor of the young hero, Gabriel retreated, his form dissolving into shadows, leaving behind a lingering threat. "This is but a taste of the darkness to come, ShockWave." Shaken but resolute, Marcus knew this confrontation was only the beginning. Gabriel was a formidable adversary, one that would require more than just power to defeat. As dawn approached, Marcus looked out over the city he vowed to protect, understanding that his journey as ShockWave was just beginning and the true test of his abilities lay ahead. In the aftermath of his initial confrontation with Gabriel, Marcus, still reverberating from the intense clash of powers, sought refuge atop one of the city's towering skyscrapers. The city below lay quiet, unaware of the supernatural battle that had just occurred in its shadows. Marcus felt the weight of his responsibilities more heavily than ever. His encounter with Gabriel had opened his eyes to the scale of threat looming over New York. It wasn't just about random acts of heroism anymore. It was a war he had inherited from Ceti, a war against a darkness that was ancient and formidable. As he reflected on the battle, Marcus realized that his understanding of his powers was still superficial. Gabriel's abilities to manipulate the dead and summon demonic entities were unlike anything Marcus had faced before. If he was to protect the city effectively, he needed not only to enhance his mastery of electricity, but also to understand the mystical aspects of the power Ceti had passed on to him. With a determined resolve, Marcus decided to temporarily retreat from his role as ShockWave. He needed to train, to grow beyond the raw display of electrical might, and to truly become the guardian Ceti intended him to be. As he reflected on the battle, Marcus realized that his understanding of his powers was still superficial. Gabriel's abilities to manipulate the dead and summon demonic entities were unlike anything Marcus had faced before. If he was to protect the city effectively, he needed not only to enhance his mastery of electricity, but also to understand the mystical aspects of the power Ceti had passed on to him. With a determined resolve, Marcus decided to temporarily retreat from his role as ShockWave. He needed to train, to grow beyond the raw display of electrical might, and to truly become the guardian Ceti intended him to be. Marcus's quest for deeper knowledge and power took him far from the familiar streets of New York to remote corners of the globe that still whispered of the old gods and their ancient magic. His first destination was the Himalayas, where monks who had once served as Ceti's acolytes secluded themselves in ancient monasteries etched into the cliff faces. The monks, recognizing the divine energy that clung to Marcus, welcomed him. They taught him meditation techniques to better channel and control his powers, and ancient lore about the celestial war between light and dark forces. From there, Marcus traveled to Egypt, to the ruins of temples that had once been dedicated to Ceti. Hieroglyphs on the weathered walls depicted Ceti wielding lightning against dark creatures similar to those summoned by Gabriel. As Marcus traced his fingers over the carvings, he felt surges of Ceti's memories, battles fought over millennia, strategies used against dark forces, and the sacrifices made to maintain balance. Each piece of history added depth, to Marcus's understanding of his powers and his purpose. With a growing sense of duty and newfound skills, Marcus returned to New York, now not just as a wielder of electricity, but as a sage of celestial warfare. His time away had transformed him. He was calmer, more focused, and his powers were finely honed and more potent than ever. Marcus, now truly Shockwave, was ready to face Gabriel again, fortified with the wisdom of the ancients and the resolve of a true protector. His retreat had not been in vain, and as he stood watching over New York, he knew that the city needed him, now more than ever. The next time Gabriel summoned darkness into his city, Shockwave would be ready to meet it head-on, not just with raw power, but with the strategic might of a seasoned warrior. Back in New York, the city seemed to pulse with a foreboding tension, as if sensing the inevitable clash between light and dark. Marcus, now fully embracing his role as Shockwave, felt more connected to the city's energy grid than ever before. His senses could detect even the slightest disturbances in the electrical currents that ran beneath the city's skin. This heightened awareness allowed him to preemptively disrupt Gabriel's attempts to spread chaos through his minions. The Demon King, noticing the change in his adversary, realized that direct attacks were no longer effective. Instead, Gabriel began to weave a more insidious form of darkness into the city, one that crept into the hearts of the despairing and the lost. Shockwave countered by strengthening community ties, empowering the citizens, and lighting up the city, both literally and metaphorically. This battle of wills between the two continued, escalating the tension to a fever pitch. Marcus knew that this war of attrition could not last forever. He began to gather allies, reaching out to other individuals who had encountered or inherited divine powers. Together, they formed a network of guardians, each bringing their own strengths and abilities to the fold. As their unity strengthened, so did their collective power, preparing them for the ultimate confrontation that Marcus knew was coming. The final battle began unexpectedly when Gabriel, harnessing the full might of his necromantic powers, summoned a massive storm of dark energy that enveloped the city. The sky turned black as night during midday, with lightning flashing ominously, not the pure white bolts associated with Shockwave, but a deep, menacing crimson. Marcus, now Shockwave in full command of his celestial legacy, called upon his allies, and they took to the streets, skis and shadows, ready to protect the city. Shockwave climbed to the highest point in New York, the Empire State Building, drawing on the city's power grid to amplify his own energies. As Gabriel appeared, surrounded by a swirling vortex of dark spirits and reanimated corpses, the air crackled with the raw power of their opposing forces. Marcus initiated the battle with a massive surge of electricity, channeling the collective energy of the city into a spectacular display of lightning, illuminating the darkened cityscape. The battle was fierce and chaotic. Gabriel unleashed waves of darkness, trying to overwhelm Shockwave with sheer numbers, but Marcus's mastery over electricity now extended beyond mere offense. He created barriers of electric force, channeled bolts that purified the undead back to rest, and orchestrated strategic attacks that dismantled Gabriel's forces piece by piece. As the battle reached its climax, Marcus realized that to truly defeat Gabriel, he needed to strike at the heart of his power. With a focused blast of divine energy, Shockwave targeted the amulet that Gabriel wore, the source of his necromantic abilities. The amulet shattered, and with it Gabriel's connection to his dark powers waned. Shockwave, seizing the moment, unleashed a final concentrated bolt of lightning, striking Gabriel directly and banishing him back to the shadow realm from which he had come. The skies cleared almost immediately, and the city let out a collective sigh of relief. Marcus, exhausted but victorious, looked out over the city he had saved. He knew that Gabriel might one day return, but he also knew that he and his allies would be ready. The city was safe for now, and Shockwave stood vigilant, a guardian not just of New York, but of the balance between light and darkness. As the last echoes of the battle faded into the bustling noise of New York City returning to normal, Marcus stood atop the Empire State Building, surveying the city that had just been snatched from the brink of eternal darkness. The citizens below, unaware of how close they had come to disaster, continued their lives, energized by the sudden, inexplicable lift in the city's mood. Marcus, feeling the residual crackle of divine electricity under his skin, knew that his victory was not just his own, but belonged to every heart that beat in sync with the city's rhythm. The defeat of Gabriel marked a turning point for Marcus as ShockWave. He had not only saved the city, but also solidified his role as its protector. The battle had tested his abilities and resolve to their limits, teaching him the depths of his power and the responsibilities it entailed. Marcus knew that the darkness might rise again, but he now stood ready, a beacon of hope and strength for all who needed him. In the days that followed, Marcus worked to strengthen the network of guardians he had formed. They met regularly, strategizing and preparing for any potential threats, sharing knowledge and skills to ensure that New York would never be vulnerable again. ShockWave became more than a hero. He became a symbol of resilience and unity, inspiring others to find the light within themselves. Gabriel's defeat also had deeper ramifications. The balance between light and darkness had been restored for now, setting an example for other cities and nations that the shadows could be held at bay with vigilance and strength. Marcus's story, though rooted in the mystic, became a tale of human spirit and the power of collective resilience. Marcus continued to patrol the city, both as ShockWave and in his civilian guise, committed to maintaining the peace and ensuring that the energies of light remained in ascendance. He often visited schools and community centers, not just to inspire, but to educate, sharing his understanding of power. Not just the kind that surged through power lines, but the kind that resided in every act of kindness and resistance against despair. As years passed, the legacy of ShockWave intertwined with the city's identity. Monuments and murals appeared, celebrating the protector in lightning, the guardian who rode the storm. But for Marcus, the true monument was the city itself, alive, thriving, and free from darkness under his watch. Marcus's journey as ShockWave, from an ordinary teenager to a divine hero, had taught him that true power lies not just in strength, but in the courage to stand up for what is right, in the wisdom to lead with compassion, and in the commitment to forge a legacy of light that would illuminate paths long after his watch ended. In the heart of New York, a legend lived on. A hero born not from the divine alone, but from the indomitable spirit of humanity.